Chapter 32. The next day, the truth came to light. The woman, whose real name was Fan Xiaochai, was the daughter of a ruined aristocratic family whose family had fallen into ruin because of the pillar of the state. She was a dead chess piece. Regardless of whether she succeeded or not, she was a dead chess piece. However, she had many uses. She could be used to do work, occupy land, and search for roots. The second son of the Lin family was just an idiot who had been used. He was half dead and half alive. This Tanhua master had been kept in the dock about everything. He had only coveted Fan Xiaochai's lips and had become an idiot from studying. How could he have known that the more attractive a woman was, the more trouble she would cause? After a shoddy chance encounter, he had become infatuated and recklessly brought into Bailiang Palace. Only heaven knew how the Lin family of Hudong's Chao country felt when they found out about this calamity. Last night's assassination attempt had not been meticulous and had been very crude. It had been done out of desperation. Miss Fan, who had entered the palace, had used the opportunity of sightseeing to draw a map of the palace and a portrait of heir Su Fengnian. Then, she had found an opportunity to assassinate him. However, their calculations were far inferior to those of the Liang Palace, and they had all suffered. As for the fate of the mastermind behind the woman surnamed Fan and the Chao country's Lin family, Su Fengnian, who was currently sitting in the tide listening pavilion warming wine, could not be bothered to pay attention to them. He only wanted to know if Fan Xiaochai regretted dying for a man she had never met. Su Fengnian did not have any pity for these people who were like moths to a flame. Beautiful women in the world were always like bamboo shoots after the rain and grass at night on the grassland. When one batch was gone, a new batch would pop up the next year. It would be impossible to get rid of all of them. If one were to go after them with pity, wouldn't that be tiring? Su Fengnian really did not have the leisure to do so. Moreover, after 3 years of hardship and traveling, Su Fengnian had also learned a lot about the shallow ways of the world. He remembered that he met a young swordsman who shared the same bad habits as him. That guy always liked to talk about how being merciful to the enemy was the same as risking one's life. It was said that he had learned it from some senior swordsman who had failed to achieve success. Every time he talked about it, his saliva would splatter everywhere, and it would always spray all over Su Fengnian's face. Su Fengnian still remembered that fellow who could not afford an iron sword and could only carry a wooden sword. Every time he saw a ranger with a sword on the street, he would look at him like a flower thief who had bumped into a beautiful woman. If that fellow knew that old Huang, who had been forced to listen to him bragging about the greatness of Mahayana swordsmanship, was actually Jianzhou Huang, who could even fight against the old monster Huang of Wulin city of Wulin, and that the old guy had hidden 5 famous swords in his sword box, what would he think? That fellow who had always wanted to find a famous teacher to learn from, was doing well now? Had he reached a higher level in swordsmanship? When they parted at the border of southern Yen, that fellow had said to Su Fengnian heroically, "When I become rich one day, I'll treat you to the best spiced beef. If 1 caddy is not enough, I'll treat you to 3 caddies." 3 caddies of beef seemed to be the limit of his imagination. After all, in the real Jianghu, there were few top masters who could break the river with one sword and move the mountains and rivers. Most of them were nameless pawns like that fellow, who had unreachable and ridiculous Jianghu dreams. Su Fengnian fiercely rubbed his cheeks. Seeing Yuan Zuozong standing aside and quietly waiting for him, Su Fengnian hurriedly got up and moved the stool for General Longgu of the 3rd grade. Yuan Zuozong's eyes flashed with surprise. He sat like a big bell and said seriously, "Your Highness, His Highness sent me to ask how to deal with the woman surnamed Fan." Su Fengnian smiled and said, "Whatever should be done." Yuan Zuozong nodded slightly. After getting an unexpected answer, he immediately got up and was ready to leave. Su Fengnian did not stop him. Not long after he sat down, he stood up again and said, "Brother Yuan, let's drink together when you have time. We won't go home until we're drunk." Yuan Zuozong showed a rare smile and said, "Okay." Su Fengnian took a pot of wine that had been prepared in advance from the tea table, and carried it to the tide listening pavilion. He went straight up to the 8th floor and saw his master, Li Yishan, who was engrossed in copying books. This haggard man with disheveled hair was not well known in Jianghu or in the imperial court. However, in Bailiang Palace, no one dared to disrespect the first tenant of the mansion. Su Fengnian sat aside and picked up the green gourd on the red sandalwood table with familiarity. He poured the wine into it. For a moment, the fragrance of the wine filled the air. The man stopped writing and smiled softly. "Now the smell of cosmetics on your body has faded a little." 3 years of parade is still beneficial. Su Fengnian smiled and then said worriedly, Master, can old Huang go to Martial Emperor City to take back the yellow room sword on the city wall? Li Yishan drank a mouthful of wine and shook his head gently. Su Fengnian said in shock, Old Kuei at the bottom of the lake is already unparalleled, and old Huang is obviously a notch stronger. Then wouldn't Wang Xianji, who proclaimed herself as the city lord of the Eastern Sea, be truly invincible? Li Yishan held the green gourd and stopped drinking. He just sniffed and said slowly, Invincible in the world? There is a group of people above the first grade. Wang Xianji has been immersed in martial arts all his life and is close to the mysterious realm. However, he is not invincible. Now the martial arts world is divided by heroes. Each has his own merits. The scene of one person standing at the top will not appear now, nor will it happen in the future. Moreover, the extreme of martial arts is just touching the threshold of the way of heaven. Moreover, martial artists outside the imperial court have little influence on the general trend of the world. Otherwise, the Bailiang cavalry would not have trampled the entire Jianghu. If you don't want to learn martial arts, the Great Pillar State will not force you. I don't care either. That's it. If millions of soldiers bow their heads, it's better to be a fearful national thief. A civil official may be able to interfere with the government, but an ordinary man will not cause chaos in the country. Su Fengnian laughed involuntarily. For more than 10 years, the Liang dynasty has been tirelessly spreading the sentence that kills without spilling blood. Millions of soldiers can be subdued, but a national thief is fearful. The first half of the sentence was praising the Great Pillar State's martial arts, which was suspected of flattery. The second half of the sentence was a blatant attack. This sentence was very knowledgeable. Even Su Xiao clapped and laughed after hearing it. However, after laughing, he scolded, Shangyin Academy is full of empty talk. They should be killed. Li Yishan lifted the wine pot and made room for Su Fengnian to copy the book for him. Su Fengnian had long been accustomed to this. His calligraphy was not bad, but he still could not cultivate any awe-inspiring righteousness. Whenever he saw Su Fengnian's drawing was not right, he would hit him with the green gourd. Li Yishan let His Royal Highness copy a lamp and sat down again. Su Fengnian lay on the side and looked at his master. His face was white, his hair was white, and he was in the declining state. The yellow scroll and the green lamp were hollow. It was said that the most bitter thing in the world was the declining state, and the hardest thing to cultivate was hollow. What kind of experience could make his master so calm? Li Yishan did not raise his head and said softly, Go and see the guests you invited to the Tide Listening Pavilion. They are about to reach the 3rd floor. Su Fengnian nodded and quietly went downstairs. On the 2nd floor, Su Fengnian saw that under a quaint bookshelf that was piled up like a mountain, stood the white fox face with a dark identity. She held a yellowed martial arts secret manual in her left hand, while her right index finger tapped her smooth forehead rhythmically. The sheathed winter-embroidered saber was inserted into the bookshelf as a mark. The white fox face just glanced at Su Fengnian and then lowered his head again. Su Fengnian, who was asking for a snub, had to retreat. It was as if the crown prince was the only person in the vast northern Liang mansion who had nothing to do. It was as if the crown prince was the only person who had nothing to do.